Game Theory Fundamentals, Episode 3, Strategic versus Extensive Form. In the previous episode, we learned about different types of games that game theorists use to model various situations and scenarios. But how do we represent a game in game theory? Today we'll explore the differences between the strategic form and extensive form, how they are represented as a matrix and diagram, and also the advantages and disadvantages of them. The strategic form, also known as the normal form, is a way of representing a game using a payoff matrix. The strategic form is mostly used to describe simultaneous games, where the players choose their strategies at the same time, without knowing what the other players are doing. The extensive form, also known as the tree form, is a way of representing games in game theory using a diagram or a graph. The extensive form is usually used to describe sequential games, where the players make their choices one after another, knowing what the previous players have done. To create a strategic form game, we need to follow these steps. First, identify the players and their strategies. The players are the decision makers in the game, and the strategies are the possible actions or plans that they can choose. For example, in the prisoner's dilemma, there are two players, Alice and Bob. Each player has two strategies: confess or stay quiet. Second, identify the payoffs and the outcomes. The payoffs are what the players get from the outcomes of the game. The outcomes are the results of the game, depending on the combination of strategies chosen by the players. In our example, the payoffs are the years in jail that the players get from the outcomes. The outcomes are the sentences that the players receive, depending on whether they confess or stay quiet. And third, create a payoff matrix, where it shows the players, the strategies, and the payoffs for each possible combination of strategies. The rows correspond to the strategies of one player, and the columns correspond to the strategies of another player. The cells contain the payoffs for each player, usually in the order of the row player and the column player. For example, in the prisoner's dilemma, the table looks like this. This table shows that if Alice and Bob both confess, they both get 5 years in jail. If Alice stays quiet and Bob confesses, Alice gets 10 years and Bob gets 0 years, and if Alice and Bob both stay quiet, they both get 1 year in jail. The strategic form has some advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are: it is simple and compact. It summarizes the essential information of the game in a single table or matrix. It is easy to analyze. It allows us to use various tools and concepts, such as dominant strategies, best responses, Nash equilibrium, and mixed strategies, to find the optimal or rational choices for the players. Equilibrium concept: strategic form games allow for the concept of Nash equilibrium, where each player's strategy is optimal given the strategies chosen by others. This concept provides a solution concept for predicting outcomes in strategic interactions. Wide-range applicability: strategic form games are widely applicable in various fields, including economics, political science, biology, and sociology, making them a versatile tool for analyzing strategic interactions. While the disadvantages are: limited information. It may not capture the order and the timing of the moves, the history and the context of the game, or the uncertainty and the incomplete information of the players. It may be unrealistic or impractical. It may assume that the players have perfect rationality, perfect information, and perfect computation, which may not be true in real-life situations. Difficulty in modeling dynamic strategies. Strategic form games may struggle to model dynamic strategies where players' actions are influenced by past moves and the expected future behavior of opponents. In game theory, extensive form diagrams are used to represent sequential games. Let's consider a simple example involving two players, player A and player B. In this simple example, both players A and B have the same set of strategies X and Y, so the tree diagram looks like this, where the players are each represented as a node and the strategies as the edges. The final payoffs are represented with the terminal nodes. Let's assume that player A, who makes the first move, chooses X. Player B will then make a decision, with two possible actions, X or Y. If B then chooses Y, this is the final payoff for both of them. The game ends with payoffs assigned to each player based on their combined choices. Here are some advantages of extensive form. it's the representation of sequential decision-making, where players take turns to make choices. This mirrors real-life situations where actions occur in a specific order. Complex strategies. Extensive form games allow for the representation of complex strategies that involve multiple decision points. Players can anticipate future moves and adjust their strategies accordingly. It enables the concept of subgame perfection, where players make optimal decisions not only at the start but also at every subsequent decision point. This leads to more refined and strategic gameplay. Realistic modeling. Extensive form games are well suited for modeling real-world scenarios that involve a series of interconnected decisions. They can capture the complexity of strategic interactions in various contexts, such as economics, politics, and biology. While the disadvantages are complexity. Extensive form games can become significantly more complex as the number of decision points and possible actions increase. This complexity can make it challenging to analyze and find optimal strategies. Information overload. In extensive form games with many decision nodes, players may face information overload, making it difficult to consider all possible outcomes and make informed decisions. Difficult to represent. Representing extensive form games visually can be challenging, especially for games with a large number of decision points and possible actions. This can make it harder for players to understand the game and make strategic decisions. Limited applicability. Extensive form games may not be suitable for all types of strategic interactions, especially those that do not involve sequential decision-making. This limits their applicability in certain contexts. So we have learned both representations for games. Whereas the strategic form is simple and best suitable for simultaneous games, it may not convey all information needed for the analysis. On the other hand, the extensive form is more complicated and best used for sequential games. Though it can convey more information, it can be harder to interpret. So to choose which one to use depends on the games and the outcomes you need. So which representation suits your favorite game the most? In the next episode, we will explore the dominant and dominated strategies that help us find the best actions for each player in a game. So stay tuned for more game theory fundamentals.